I am an occupational therapist, which means that I engage young people in activity and purposeful and meaningful activities to them which will help them grow as a person, either reduce their anxiety, reduce their anger, improve their self-confidence, give them different opportunities to spend time doing things other than feeling sad and angry and in a bad place, really. So that's what my role is.
I've been in this job as a pastoral deputy for 25 years now in a number of schools. So mental health is something that I've been dealing with for a very long time.
Well, I'm the principal of the college, so basically I'm the chief executive of the whole organisation, so it entails everything that goes on. So it's my job to be in charge of staffing, student welfare, pastoral care.
We have a number of services here. When the young people arrive, they come for generally a 5-day assessment, and in those 5 days we decide whether or not they need a bed here. Sometimes it's a crisis and it's over and done in 2 or 3 days, and sometimes it's not. So if we decide after 5 days they should stay, then they stay for a month, and in that time they'll probably see the psychologist. They will definitely see the occupational therapist. The social worker becomes involved if there's a feeling that the family has some sort of input into the difficulties. We have a family therapist who would do what the social worker does, looking at the family, but in a much more psychological, systematic sort of investigation, really. And then the young people have their name nurse sessions. They'll have a session with a psychiatrist every week.
There's a lot of resources from, obviously we have all our achievement tutors, and our achievement tutors trained, and we've had a charity working with us called Strong Young Minds. And then they also have at their disposal, and for students, the Big White Wall, which is an online resource to help students to cope, to get support, etc. We have counselling, we have senior tutors and assistant principals, all trained and looking for mental health issues. We also have an additional learning support department where the manager, Stuart, is again expert and is increasingly having to be expert with people who've probably got more profound mental health issues. So there's a full range of support. One of the things that we're continually looking at is how do we interface with the medical side of things. So last year, for a short period of time over exams, I employed a mental health nurse, and that was good for students, and the mental health nurse did a really good job. It was slightly different though for an educational setting to employ a mental health nurse. So I think what we need to do is to talk to the NHS and see what way in which we can communicate and get better resourcing and better communication that way.
We have me, and I have my pastoral team, and between us we will quite often work with the student. We buy in a professional counsellor for 5 hours every week, and she will do either half-hour or 1-hour slots. It's pretty rigorous, and the children and her do decide when they need to close. Children self-referring to that. We don't accept any parents ringing up saying, I want my child to see a counsellor, unless the child agrees, and it's very, very effective, very cost effective as well. We also have access in this school to something called PS Tech, which is a new online system, which is a form of hypnotherapy that can actually remove anxiety, and we're beginning to use this more widely. We're having huge results, really, really good positive results with this technique, and we're one of the few schools that are currently buying into it. Of course, there is a cost, and we actually buy into one of the gentlemen that has helped devise it, and he comes in about 4 to 6 days a year and works with young people. I then have a waiting list because I always prioritise the senior students, The younger ones, if their parents can afford it, I suggest that they buy him in privately. That is really helping. So I will signpost in this school as well. Eating disorders we never ever get involved with. We signpost those to health, because you can actually do more damage than good if you start tackling things such as eating disorders. Self-harm we will often deal with in school, because I always say we always want to know why a young person self-harms. It's not the self-harm that's the important thing, and that does take a little bit of unpicking. But because you've known that young person for a long time, often years, you've often built up trust, and so you can quite often try and get them to tell you what the underlying problem is.
I think the numbers of people suffering from mental health crises is increasing, but at the same time I think we're seeing different sorts of pictures of people. For example, we see far more younger people here with what we would call personality difficulties. So personalities developed in your childhood, and if you have trauma, if you have illness, difficulties with your family, then your personality doesn't get developed as it should do, and the effect of that means that when stress is put on you in your adolescence, you can't cope with it. So we're seeing an enormous number of young people come here with difficulties such as that. So that's low self-confidence, self-harm by cutting and ligaturing. They also have difficulties with emotional attachment, so they become very, very dependent upon the staff here very quickly, or they don't have a very good relationship with their family, and this causes them great difficulties that really can't be fixed within a hospital setting, but because people are very worried about them because they are very risky in their behaviour, people outside this hospital think they need to be in hospital because where else are we going to keep them safe? But once here, I'm afraid those young people see someone getting attention for having ligature or cutting themselves, and they do the same because they've no other way of coping. So there is an enormous number increase in young people like that. Whereas 25 years ago, I didn't see that. I saw more young people with depression, mania, bipolar, and schizophrenia, psychosis, and eating disorders. Many more eating disorders are looked after in the community by community teams, so we don't have as many of them as we did 25 years ago in what we call Tier 4 and Tier 4 hospitals.
Without a shadow of a doubt, it's one of the big worries of the age, if you ask me. Steadily and increasing year on year, the college is facing a number of students with a broad range of mental health problems, but they are more prevalent in the college. Now the college, Newman, has grown quite considerably over the past few years, so if you think about it, we've got, not only have we grown, but we've grown, the proportion of students with mental health problems has risen. So without a shadow of a doubt, there is a significant rise in mental health problems in this age group, and it's a real worry. Because of the nature, mental health issues are broad ranged, aren't they? So it will be from anxiety and impacting on how they feel in the classroom, anxious about their work, and it could be quite low level. But then it could be the full range to somebody that is dealing with issues that make them feel suicidal, or it could be manifest itself in eating disorders. And because we're a college of 3,500 students, that then we do see a few students. I wouldn't say that there's a lot, it's not a big proportion of the college, it's bigger than it was, but you do see the full range of mental health issues presenting themselves at the college.
I've definitely seen an increase, probably an increase in younger children in the past 2-3 years, and it is increasing. We now have more younger children, by younger I mean 12, 13, 14-year-olds, experiencing things such as panic attacks than I've ever seen before in my career. So we have the very high-end abuse type cases or domestic abuse, we have the eating disorders, we have the self-harm, which are similar to eating disorder, in that both of those come from underlying issues. The self-harm is much easier to help the young person with, because then you track it back, find out what's wrong, and then you know then how to deal with it. We are getting many more issues around anxiety to do with work and to do with pressure. But there is another generation of anxieties coming through, and those are the anxieties created through social media. And that is major league. Children coming into high school with those anxieties already in place.
I think mental illness is increasing in young people because mental health difficulties are increasing in young people. So their desires are to be much more than they are capable of. So the desire for money, the desire for fame are there, which weren't around a long time ago. And in order to get that, they push themselves an enormous amount. So young people who are not very bright think that everything is achievable, and it's not. And people with moderate IQ think everything's achievable, and it's not. And that creates a huge gap between their actual self and their desired self, and that causes anxiety. Add to that social media, add to that drug and alcohol difficulties, add to that poor parenting, add to that schools that don't tap into young people with difficulties early on enough, and it all becomes loaded to mental health distress. I think that's why young people are not as happy as young people were when I was at school, and 25 years ago when I first started working in psychiatry. It's very, very different now. I think a lot of young people who come through here are unhappy with their lot. Despite taking away the mental health issue, they're not happy with their situation.
Pressure that young people are under from primary school onwards in testing, exam culture, league tables, then into GCSEs and the pressure to do, the changes now to the grading 1 to 9. I wonder if that's a good idea, because in the old days when you got an A, you felt really good about yourself. Now you get a 7 and there's 2 things above you. And if you get a 4, there's 5 things. It's a very difficult landscape for young people to negotiate. So I think the exam culture must be playing its part. We try and support to get that sort of aim high, be challenging. There's nothing wrong with putting pressure on everybody. We all need a bit of pressure, don't we, to work. You've got to get it right. You've got to be there to support, and the pressure's got to be right. I hope we get it right at the college. I believe we do, but I do think by the time the young people are presented to us, they've been through an awful lot of measurement and assessment. That said, I also think social media is playing a huge part in young people's well-being, and I think that provides its own levels of scrutiny and anxiety, which isn't healthy. And there must be other multiple causes. If you look at the fact that family breakdown, recession, poverty, the rise of food banks, there must no issue is really one primary cause, is it? There must be multifaceted, but yeah, of course exams must play its part. We must be vigilant to make sure we're not adding to it.
Ban the internet. I'm huge on anything negative to do on the internet, and we make it very, very clear at this school how much harm children can do to each other. And I always say it to a face. Don't write it, say it to a face. So there is work around that you can do. I also think that family breakups, adult breakups, domestic abuse, witnessing, that is also increasing. I do see an increase in that. And that is really concerning, because quite often we're not aware that's going on unless the child tells us. So the adult services in the background, they're often called MASH, multi-agency safeguarding hubs, and now beginning to inform schools when there has been domestic abuse around a child at weekends. We can then do what we call a health check on that child, make sure that they're okay, and provide them with a bit of support. So it's really sometimes about other agencies informing schools. The schools can support the child, and then that can help them build resilience to cope with what's going on at home. It also means we can also help the parents, because sometimes the parents need a little bit of TLC to get through problems. And quite often when a child has issues, if you meet the parent, you understand where the child's issues come from.